There she is. How are you?
I'm good. I have a question. If you eliminate from the Hannity hate hotline, all the people who are half in the bag, how many people would you actually have on
wait a minute.
hotline?
When we did the Laura Ingraham...
way into the Jim Beam. Way into it.
Wait a minute. When we did the Laura Ingraham hotline for the night, you got all the, I love Laura. Laura,
They were totally
Laura.
sober. No, those people were totally sober. All my relatives,
only your viewers are sober.
AA.
It's an hour later. The Jim Beam, there's more of it in their system.
Jack Daniels, sorry, Sean. Let's get the alcohol right. Great show,
Daniels,
as always.
Beam. By the way, if you drink too much of it and you wake up with a headache, it's not your fault. Blame Donald Trump. That's what the liberal media would do.
Absolutely. All right,
Have a good
Sean,
show.
great show. And good evening from Washington. I'm Laura Ingraham, and this is the Ingraham Angle. A major win in federal court today for President Trump and a big boost for his push to build the border wall. Univision anchor Jorge Ramos is here. That's going to be fun, to debate me on the wall and a new Supreme Court ruling that could completely alter the immigration issue. I'll discuss the president's strategies as well for Mexico and China. Huge news on that with the administration's point man on trade. And a huge number of teens, this made me sick, frankly, maybe yours, are now sexting, sending out sexually explicit images of themselves and of others. Some experts are saying it's a positive development. A debate not to be missed is ahead. But first, the Florida school shooting, the sheriff's reaction, and the Stoneman Douglas High School kids. That's all the focus of tonight's angle. You know, we brought to you last night exclusive news about what was happening behind the scenes, new and shocking details about the activities of the Broward County Police under the leadership of Sheriff Scott Israel. We shared with you a department email that was kind of bizarre, asking officers, maybe ordering officers, pleading with officers, to defend the sheriff. It read, quote, "At the moment we find our agency up against a flurry of media allegations and a personal attack against our sheriff. Sheriff Israel stood with us. Now we must stand with him. It's important that they know we stand as one." Hey, guys, this should be not about saving anyone's backside, but about transparency, not protecting the sheriff or anyone else. Remember, Sheriff Israel has endorsed gun control, and for that, he won praise from student activists. And this is happening as his department's actions before, during, and after the horrific school shooting are now being investigated by a separate state commission. When challenged, Israel, don't forget, an elected Democrat sheriff, brags about his amazing leadership. But it may not have been so amazing. Last night, we reported exclusively that sources close to the Broward Sheriff's Office are telling us that deputies on the scene of the shooting were told not to enter the school unless their body cameras were turned on. Okay. Well, since they did not have body cameras, they didn't engage the shooter or enter the school. The sheriff's office, by the way, has not disputed our report. When asked about the deputies who failed to enter the school building, Broward Superintendent Robert Runcie said, quote, "There potentially could have been law enforcement that were sitting on the sidelines. Again, we'll see what comes out in the investigation. Broward County Sheriff's Office and the FBI has all the video related to this. We have none of it in our possession. They made that clear. They came, they gave us a warrant and a subpoena, and they took it all." But remember, Sheriff Israel said that the videos may never be released. Another bizarre comment. How do you say that? And it's not clear if the feds have the video as well. It would even be his sole decision at this point. And then there are the Parkland, Florida school students. They've been through a lot. And for anyone who's been conscious since Valentine's Day, the media has featured these kids wall to wall, their passion, their words. And I'd argue that their pain and loss is, at times, being exploited by anti-gun activists, sometimes using them as proxies even. Remember this from the CNN town hall.
Senator Rubio, it's hard to look at you and not look down the barrel of an AR-15 and not look at Nicholas Cruz. But the point is, you're here. Can you tell me right now that you will not accept a single donation from the NRA in the future?
Nice. Well, I don't know. In some of the exchanges, I imagine the sheriff wouldn't probably like it if his officers were spoken to in that tone. Well, he then revealed himself.
We do need to have some gun control reform. 18-year-olds should never have a rifle. An 18-year-old kid should not have a rifle. 18-year-old kid, they're not adults yet. They're in high school. These kids should not have a rifle.
Do you hear what he said? Kids. They're still in high school. They're going through a lot. It's something called growing up. And Sheriff Israel made unwittingly one of the salient points here. Why on earth should teenagers dictate policy on gun control, the Second Amendment, or frankly anything else for that matter? Now, without diminishing their pain, their sadness, some of them are really smart, I think, or their right to express their opinion about the slaughter, of course, of their fellow classmates, why should their political or policy views, I mean, we're talking sometimes 14, 15, 16-year-old kids, be given special consideration? Well, when they're not insulting congressmen or senators, they're advising them on gun policy.
You just met with about 5 students from Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. You know, I've heard a lot of conservatives say these kids aren't experts. Why are they having an influence on this debate? But you met with them, so what did you think?
It's high school kids, a sympathetic group, obviously, but a very, very articulate, committed bunch of kids. And they are obviously social media savvy, and that's why I think they're having the impact that they're having. They're organized and they're here, so I'm glad they are. I hope they keep it up.
These guns are out there on the streets that people who may be unstable are able to get it just as anybody else.
If we ever want to end this, we have to start at the federal level, because that is where the law is supreme. That is where we have to take action.
Thinking of Senator Flake for a moment, who's retiring because he's at 18% approval, I actually probably would prefer the students to most of his advisors who've been advising him over the years. But that having been said, before 3 of the students went on Ellen DeGeneres' very popular talk show, a GIF of them backstage appeared on Twitter. That's kind of cool. They look like they're having fun. And they look kind of like, well, little Oscar nominees. They looked adorable. Perhaps the Wall Street Journal's Bill McGurn, he raised, I think, the best question maybe about kids supposedly turned policy experts. He wrote the following. Quick show of hands for those with children. How many of you look to your teens for political wisdom, whether it's the daughter obsessing over her Snapchat streaks or the son who would spend his day eating Doritos and binge gaming Grand Theft Auto if you let him? Okay, be honest. I have 3 kids. Did you raise your hand? I didn't think so. And that's the angle. Joining me now for a reaction here in Washington from the liberal perspective, Mark Glaze. He's a former executive director of Everytown for gun safety. He's very anti-NRA and pro-gun control. He says the NRA has a pro-slaughter agenda. And in Tallahassee, Florida, Richard Corcoran is the Speaker of the House in Florida. He's a Republican. Gentlemen, great to see both of you. Mark, take it away. You heard my angle. What part of it do you disagree?
So look, I don't think these kids have unique knowledge. I think part of the reason people taking them seriously is that in January, which means less than 2 months, there have been 18 school shootings and many more mass shootings. I think it's like Chinese water torture. At some point, things just reach a point where they break. And I think these kids, for reasons that are not clear to me, but I wish I could model it, decided that they were not going to duck and cover, but they were going to get out there and start agitating for change.
So because you're a victim and a survivor, you have a special policy expertise in the arena. And again, everyone has a right to speak out, fine.
Yeah.
But I'm just talking about the frequency with which they're put on cable television, the celebrity add-on with the obviously $500,000 check. People can give money to whoever they want to.
Right.
But it's much cooler, no offense, Mark, you're cool, but it's much cooler, don't you think, to have kids out there talking about, gotta get me, I see you down the barrel of an AR-15 or whatever he said, than it is for you to say that. I mean, look, you look pretty cool, but those kids, I mean, that's a picture with 1,000 words.
Oh, look, if I'm flipping around on cable, I want to see those kids say that rather than me because it's much more interesting. But look, you're right. These kids don't have unique insight into the policy arguments here, but we got other people like me to do that who know everything there is to know about.
All right, let's go to the Speaker of the House in Florida, Representative Corcoran. Your reaction to this, because I know you have pushed and pushed and pushed for a common sense approach to policing in these circumstances and to the schools and hardening the school targets as we see a boycott of the NRA, which we're going to get to in a moment. What's your reaction to what we're seeing so far?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Laura. I've met with probably close to 100 students. I've met with parents of the victims. I do think that they have something to add to the debate, and I think they've been very constructive. And one of the things that we're doing in Florida is we've instituted, as President Trump has suggested, the most robust, first-of-its-kind Marshall program where we take sworn law enforcement officers. They have more training, more expertise, whether it's gun, active shooter, defense tactics than our law enforcement officers. And we give them that training, and now they can be certified teachers and be in the schools. And if that happens,
but the kids don't want that. No.
But
the activists, again, the activists, I just think the proxies for the gun control movement, they don't want teachers armed. That's the last thing they want. They're, in fact, saying on interview after interview, don't you dare arm the teachers, because that's going to create another problem. Some crazy kid gets a hold of the teacher's gun, and then they're off to the races. So you want to arm teachers in schools. They say, you're doing the bidding of the NRA. Just going to make them more money.
Well, I think they're changing the debate, and it's not arming teachers. It's having sworn law enforcement officers with all the expertise and training of any deputy or any police officer out on the street, and allowing them to teach in the classroom. And we've actually had students, we've actually had parents of the victims in our committee today testifying that having a Marshall program like we've outlined is common sense.
Mark, I want to play for you and both of you some students and their discussion of the National Rifle Association. Let's watch.
Sure.
The NRA is not going to do anything but help shootings happen and just promoting them.
Any politician on either side who is taking money from the NRA is responsible for events like this.
If they accept this blood money, they are against the children.
If you can't get elected without taking money from child murderers, why are you running?
This is to every lawmaker out there. No longer can you take money from the NRA. No longer can you fly under the radar doing whatever it is that you want to do, because we are coming after you.
Coming after you.
So look, I'll be nicer than Dana Loesch was on this topic. I don't think the NRA loves it when there's a mass shooting, but I think the agenda that they support directly facilitates.
They're mass murderers.
Directly facilitates mass shootings and the shootings that take place every day that don't get the headlines. It is their philosophy that there should be, anybody should be able to get any gun that they want, and as many of them.
That's totally untrue. That is completely untrue. The NRA does not believe convicted criminals should get guns. They do not believe that someone who has been committed to an insane asylum should get a gun. They do not believe that at all. And I'm not even a member of the NRA when I say that.
Right. That's the law as it currently exists.
Right.
But the bottom line is the vast majority of crimes that are committed with guns were committed by people who bought them legally, who passed a background check.
So in your heart of hearts, you prefer that all handguns be banned, right? Because handguns commit most of the murders in the country by far. I think 3/4 of all murders are committed by handguns.
Look, I'm one of those guys who thinks that the NRA is actually much smarter about this stuff than we are. They just make the case of what they want, no matter how outrageous, and they keep making it for decades, and then they win. I think we ought to reverse Heller. I think it should not be an individual right to own a gun in this house.
Okay, so you want to, Scalia's decision goes out the window. Right. Speaker Corcoran, right now we have a massive effort by celebrities and students to boycott the NRA. And one of the, Alyssa Milano, I know she's high on your list of authorities, she said, we're calling for a one-day boycott of Amazon, Apple TV, FedEx. Pass it on. Don't shop, don't stream, don't ship. Fred Smith of FedEx said, you know, we're not endorsing the NRA, but we're not playing this game, because where does it end? How about companies' views on climate change? Companies' views on, I mean, have you ever done a road race where, you know, Planned Parenthood ever had a sign? I mean, you politicize everything. Your reaction to the boycotts?
Well, I think it's silly, and I think it's vindictive, and it's pernicious, and it's polemic. It doesn't get to the solution. What we're trying to do is make sure that what happened never happens again. And to your other guests' comments, I'm an NRA member. I'm an A-rated legislator with the NRA. I have a concealed weapons permit. I have 6 children from 17 into 6, and your comments are offensive. What I tell my kids all the time, that there is no greater threat to their life, liberty, and freedom than big government. Big government has destroyed more lives, murdered more people, slaughtered more people in the history of mankind than any other entity. It has certainly not been guns. It's been big government
Stalin,
and their pernicious,
Hitler,
flawed leadership.
Do we have to go through the list?
So the reason you need reason you need an arsenal
we have
in
it in
your house
Bosnia. We have it in Bosnia. We've had it in Cambodia. We've had it in.
Okay, well, I got your point, Mark.
So the reason you need an arsenal of assault weapons in your house is because Paul Ryan is going to come to your house, take away your guns, give you health care, and then strip you of all your other rights. That's the scenario that is stopping us from regulating guns?
Well, you know what? I tell you what, I live in a state of Florida, and in Florida we have a massive exile community from Cuba where that exact thing happened, so don't think that it can't happen anywhere else.
Well, and Governor Rick Scott is actually changing his mind on some of these issues.
Well,
Maybe you ought to think about it, too.
I think in the end...
I haven't seen that at all. I think Governor Scott's been a tremendous advocate for our constitutional rights.
Well, he wants to
while
raise the age, right, of the AR? I mean, you're in favor of raising the age of the AR speaker, right? You are, too.
Yeah. As long as we can get rid of as President Trump said, as long as we can get rid of this insanity that we take our most precious resources, our children, and we put them in quote-unquote gun-free zones, that's just insanity. And we're going to end that with our Marshall program. All
right, guys, great segment. And by the way, President Trump did score a huge win today on his plans for that border wall, and I have a feeling that Univision's Jorge Ramos may have something to say about that. I'll debate him next.
Reseller.
The same federal judge of Mexican heritage that candidate Trump said in 2016 was biased against him just gave President Trump a huge win on the border wall. U.S. District Court Judge Gonzalo Curiel ruled that the Trump administration can proceed with plans to build a border wall regardless of environmental objections. I also want to get into today's Supreme Court immigration ruling with our next guest, Univision and Fusion anchor Jorge Ramos. He's the author of a new book I just started, Stranger, The Challenge of a Latino Immigrant in the Trump Era. Jorge, great to see you. How are you?
Thanks so much for inviting me.
All right, congrats on the book. So what is your take on the Supreme Court ruling that came down today? First of all, the one that says that the border wall can go forward without concern about the environmental objections. There was a lawsuit followed.
Yeah, I think the first thought is that President Trump is going to have to think about, again, the racist comments that he made about Judge Gonzalo Curiel, because it's exactly the same judge that now sided with his government. So that racist remark that President Trump made,
which part of it was... Yeah, by the way, I don't like to comment on judges when you're before the judge on an issue or when you're a chief executive. I wouldn't necessarily have done that. But what part of that remark was racist? Because he said he didn't think someone of Mexican heritage could rule on immigration-related matters because of the dual loyalty?
That's precisely the definition of racism. When you think that someone cannot do his job simply because of his heritage. And President Trump thought that because Judge Gonzalo Curiel is from Mexican heritage, that he couldn't do his job on dealing with Trump University. So that's a racist statement, the same way as it was a racist statement to say that Mexican immigrants were rapists, and the same way as it is a racist statement to say that people from Haiti and African nations are from S-hole countries. Those are racist statements made by President Trump.
You know, we know that President Obama has used derogatory language about other countries. We know that others have done the same thing, including Democrats and Republicans. They've all done that.
Different.
Yeah, well, but on the issue of racism, particularly, you make some really kind of wild charges in your book that we're going to get into in just a moment. Sure. But there was another case that came down on the court today. It was a 5-3 ruling that said the U.S. government can indefinitely detain individuals who are found at the border or even green card holders who they have a reason to question their legal status. That was a 5-3 ruling. Your reaction to that?
Well, it's not easy to be an immigrant nowadays in the United States. Many people, many immigrants feel that they
illegal are immigrant, Jorge. You mean illegal immigrant? You always do this, and it drives people nuts.
No,
illegal immigrant.
First of all, I don't call them illegal immigrants because no one is illegal in this world.
What do they call them in Mexico?
They're simply undocumented immigrants. And the fact is that it is increasingly difficult to be an immigrant in this country. Donald Trump has made this a hostile, dangerous nation for many immigrants, undocumented and documented.
Latino unemployment is at a record low. It was 4.8% last month. That was the record low. Now it's 4.9%. That's not a good statistic for you? What do you want it at 2%? That would be nice. I'll take that too.
I think that's positive when it comes to economics. But how about if you're a family whose father or mother has been deported? How about if you're one of the people that the Trump government has arrested? The arrests in the Trump first year are 30% higher than in the last year of Barack Obama. So, okay, sure, unemployment is better for Latinos. However, Donald Trump has been arrested many more people than Barack Obama did.
Okay, Jorge, you know, let's cut through all this. Let's get a simple, let's get an answer to it.
That's good news.
I'm a simple person at the bottom of all this. So my question to you is, do you believe in nationhood?
Absolutely.
Do you believe in nations?
Absolutely, and I believe that every single country has the right to protect its border. I do believe.
Do they have the right? Do countries have the right to determine who comes into the country and who must leave their country? Do they have that sovereign right?
I do believe that, but I also believe, Laura, that we are partly responsible for the 11 million undocumented immigrants who are in this country, simply because we benefit from their work every single day, from the food that we ate, to the homes that they're building, to the children that they take care of. Undocumented immigrants, they pay taxes. They create jobs.
And mostly, Jorge, I've seen people get cash under the table. Not all of them pay taxes. I'm so sick of hearing that either. Every illegal immigrant rescues a cat from the tree. I mean, there was also a DACA recipient just last week who was arrested, you probably read it, for making threats against a school. So every time we hear DACA, 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 everyone's supposed to think, oh, these are all future valedictorians. Maybe some of them will be.
The vast majority.
But we have a right, as Abigail Hernandez, and she was arrested. She's in federal detention right now up in Yonkers, New York, arrested for making a threat against a school she didn't attend, by the way. For every time you say it's bad for immigrants in the United States, why do so many people want to come to this country if this is a country that is not welcoming to legal immigrants, people who have the faith in the system and follow the law, not for those who break the law and then expect special benefits on the other side?
So why do they all want to come here, Jorge? DACA recipients, are you criminalizing 2 million
That's the game
dreamers
you're playing and no one buys it.
Because one person, it would be the same way as if I say that all non-Hispanic whites are like Stephen Paddock, the man who killed 58 people in Vegas. Or that all non-Hispanic whites are responsible for what Adam Lanza did in Sandy Hook. It's exactly the same comparison. You cannot criminalize all the dreamers.
They're already here unlawfully. No. They're already here unlawfully. We don't have to criminalize them. They're here unlawfully.
Then don't. So don't say that simply because of one case, all the dreamers are like that. They are not.
Jorge, in the end, this country is the greatest country, in my view. I know you're both a citizen of Mexico. You vote in Mexico, correct?
I vote in Mexico and I vote in the United States.
Are you going to vote for Peña Nieto or no? Done with him?
I think Peña Nieto is one of the worst presidents that Mexico has ever had.
And, why don't you run? We need you to run. That'd be fun. I'll come down and interview down there.
I'm part of the United States, and I intend to stay here. But I think, honestly, I think President Peña Nieto has been one of the worst presidents that Mexico has had. He didn't even have the courage to tell President Trump in his face that Mexico was not going to pay for the wall.
Do you think do you think in the end Mexico will forge a strong relationship with China instead of renegotiating NAFTA, and that's going to be a good thing for Mexico, communist China?
I don't know if it's going to be a good thing for Mexico. I think a good thing for Mexico would be a strong relationship with the United States. But if you have the President of the United States who wants Mexico to pay for the wall, and Trump has to tell the truth to everyone, Mexico won't pay for that wall.
I think Mexico might pay some of it indirectly. Indirectly, Jorge, we're out of time.
I don't see that. I don't see how Mexico is going to pay for that. Well,
it might be a new trade agreement. We might have a whole new business arrangement with Mexico that will be great for Mexico and good for the United States. But I love having you on. Thank you so much, and congratulations on your book, Stranger.
Thank you.
Love having you on. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Laura.
And moving ahead with the border wall may mean trade retaliation by Mexico. Speaking of that topic, up next, I'm going to talk to the man who'll try to prevent that while ensuring that China plays by the rules of free trade. Really important topic. And later, some experts suggesting that teen sexting is a good thing. I kid you not. Stay there. Is increasingly wealthy, increasingly aggressive, largest standing army in the world? No one else has done it like him. And now there may be a major fight brewing with Mexico over trade NAFTA and the wall. Who's going to pay for it? My next guest is at the center of it all. And the U.S. Trade Representative Bob Lighthizer might not be a household name, but you're not going to want to miss any of this. He joins us exclusively. Mr. Lighthizer, great seeing you. Thanks for being back with us. So we read that now on this issue with NAFTA renegotiation, all these deals, I keep hearing the scuttlebutt about all these great new deals are going to start, that there's been a snag in the negotiations. And it was reported in Reuters, Washington Post, that there was a call between the president and the Mexican president, Peña Nieto, and it ended in kind of some type of testy manner. I guess the snag or the holdup was about who's going to fund the wall. I just want to play something for you. My radio listeners today chimed in on this topic of whether it matters if Mexico pays or if it's an indirect payment. Let's listen.
I'm totally in support of the president. If he can bring in much more revenue, bring in billions of dollars, and use those funds to pay for the wall, it's the heart of the deal.
I always expected my tax dollars to pay for the wall.
I never expected him to get the money directly from Mexico, but I always knew there would be a way he could get it indirectly, and I knew he would do it.
So, Mr. Ambassador, it doesn't seem like the hardcore Trump supporters care about the wall. So why should that be a snag here? It seems like the president has played this really smartly as a negotiating matter.
Well, I mean, first of all, the wall is kind of out of my lane. I stay in my lane. We have to have a wall. Beyond that, I stay in my lane. And my lane is really about trying to get new deals. It's trying to reverse a very bad trend that we've had for a long, long time in the trade area. The president ran on this. He feels strongly about it. When I talk to him, it's workers, ranchers, farmers. That's it. It's wages and it's jobs. And I think if we renegotiate that deal, if we get a good deal with Mexico and hopefully with Canada, if that's possible, we're going to find more jobs.
The biggest holdup seems to be about auto manufacturing, and that's where the lion's share of our trade deficit with Mexico is. I was shocked to just read today that 77% of Mexican manufactured vehicles that were exported came to the United States. Now, that's because there's no tariff on those because of NAFTA, correct?
That's correct.
And what will a potential deal look like regarding that type of imbalance?
The biggest part of the problem between the two countries, and from a trade point of view, is that Mexico has an industrial policy, which is a smart one. It's designed to get auto companies to move to Mexico and then ship to the U.S. You say 77%. For some companies, it's even higher. And a lot of these are companies with very little products that are made in America. So they're low U.S. content. And the kind of thing we're looking at is to have a better balance, to have a higher regional content, but also a U.S. content, and to reorganize the way we keep track of which is which. The president's objective is we have to get more jobs back to America. We have to reduce the deficit. And that will ultimately put pressure on wages and wages in the country.
Again, Global Trade, which is a big publication in the global trade arena, they say that critics will say that advanced economies have been steadily reducing the share of jobs in manufacturing. And that's really accounting for a lot of the job losses in the United States. You can nail some of them to NAFTA, but most of it is because of improving in productivity, technology changing. So we're steadily moving away from those types of manufacturing jobs. What do you say to that?
The greatest economies in the world right now are the United States, they're China, they're Germany, and they're Japan. Who says Germany and Japan don't have basically a lot of manufacturing? Now, as a percentage, it's shrinking? Perhaps, but those are still great jobs, very important jobs, and they spin off wealth to thousands and millions of other people who serve the people who do the manufacturing. So to me, it's complete nonsense to say that we don't need manufacturing.
So if we have a $60 billion, $70 billion trade deficit with Mexico, we have 8 times that, maybe, with China. Last year was the biggest trade deficit, the first year of the Trump administration, that we've ever had. Now you have to decide by the administration by April about what you're going to do with Chinese aluminum imports. You have concern of dumping, under market price goods, and they're now saying, well, we could retaliate on your agriculture. The sour gum coming into the United States feeds livestock, and so there's a trade war. Lighthizer, Trump are starting a trade war. It's going to be a nightmare. And you say?
The response that we're going to start a trade war is nonsense. We have a very, very imbalanced relationship with China. And once again, it's not based on basic economics. It's based on an industrial policy. This is a country that has a centrally driven kind of an economy. They take technology, they subsidize, they use access to their own markets, and create an enormous amount of wealth and an imbalance with the United States, not based on basic economics.
A lot of people I hear say, well, the president doesn't really know the nuance of policy. He'll just get on the phone with someone and it'll blow up the negotiations. Or he doesn't really follow the nitty-gritty of things like trade or military policy. You're in all these meetings with President Trump on a weekly basis, sometimes a daily basis, given what's going on. I know you can't reveal what he says, but you can tell us, does he get these concepts? Is he into this?
Look, if you look what President Trump said when he was 35 years old and follow it to where he said what he's saying right now, it's the same thing. He understands the issues. When I'm in these meetings, it is a very strong give and take from a variety of people with interest. The president is beyond engaged. He cares about jobs and wages. Politics never comes up. And when he's not thinking about jobs and wages, it's wages and jobs. This is what he thinks about.
We really appreciate your coming on, spending some time.
Thank you, Laura. This is an extremely important issue. You're one of the very few people that is actually pushing it, and part of the reason is because it is complicated, but it's extremely important. And I'm honored to have had a chance to come out here and talk about it.
Ambassador Lighthizer, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And now, is it healthy for teens to be sexting, and should it be added to their sex ed curriculum? We're going to debate it next.
McCarthy, Schiff memo harms Democrats more than it helps them. National Review columnist and former U.S. Attorney Andrew McCarthy determined that House Intelligence Committee ranking member Representative Adam Schiff's memo does more harm than good to the California Democrats' cause of trying to justify the Obama administration's surveillance of Donald Trump presidential campaign associates. McCarthy argued in his piece published over the weekend that Schiff's memo corroborates the central claim of the Republican memo authored primarily by Intelligence Committee Chair Representative Devin Nunes that the FBI and the Department of Justice failed to reveal to the FISA court that the Trump dossier, presented as the key piece of evidence, was funded by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democrat National Committee. A major takeaway from the Schiff memo is that the FBI and the DOJ withheld from the FISA court the fact that Michael Steele's dossier was a project of the Clinton campaign, wrote McCarthy. Naturally, the reader must ferret this admission out of a couple of dense paragraphs, in which Democrats risibly claim that the DOJ was transparent with the court about Steele's sourcing, he continued. McCarthy pointed out in the DOJ's FISA application that the agency made it abundantly clear Trump's campaign was the focus of the surveillance, referring to him as candidate number one who might have ties to Russia. However, rather than referring to the commissioner of the work as candidate two as the DOJ easily could have done, thereby making it readily discernible to the judge that Clinton was behind the dossier, the agency identified its origin as a U.S.-based law firm. Perkins Coie was the firm hired by Clinton and the DNC to obtain the dossier from Steele via the opposition research firm Fusion GPS. The DOJ knew all of this, but withheld that information from the FISA court. Further, McCarthy noted the DOJ wrote in its application, the FBI speculates that the identified U.S. person was likely looking for information that could be used to discredit candidate number one's campaign. The columnist questioned in response, why would the FBI speculate that a political motive was likely involved when, in reality, the FBI well knew that a very specific political motive was precisely involved? It is disingenuous to tell a judge that something is likely when, in fact, it is beyond any doubt, argued McCarthy. The former prosecutor also went on to shoot down the notion contained in Schiff's memo that simply because 4 different judges ordered the renewal of the FISA warrant on Trump campaign associate Carter Page, There was credible evidence he was someone worthy of being surveilled. In criminal surveillance orders, for example, it is common for prosecutors to bring renewal applications back to the same judge who authorized the original surveillance, he wrote. That judge presumably knows the case better and is thus in a superior position to detect any irregularities. McCarthy observed that even if FISA courts do not function along the same lines, the failure to disclose the Clinton and DNC origins of the dossier was simply committed on 4 separate occasions. If a judge was not made aware of material facts, the judge's authorization of a warrant does not validate the derelict application, he argued. In a tweet on Saturday, Trump described the release of the Democrat memo as a bust, only confirming that there were government surveillance abuses in relation to his campaign. Nunes released a point-by-point response to Schiff's memo that same day. The congressman said, "The American people now clearly understand that the FBI used political dirt paid for by the Democratic Party to spy on an American citizen from the Republican Party. What do you think?" Scroll down to comment below.